So before we have an afternoon coffee break, we're going to have the panelists who spoke about privacy, all the presenters come on stage and have a little panel so you can ask any questions. Liz, and like this morning, we're going to have the microphone go around. I think we're going to do a mic change on Patrick so that he doesn't get an unfair advantage.
Come on.
And can we have the second mic? So there should be one going. Okay, so yeah, we'll take that. So you have a question, sir? Yeah, please. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know who can answer this for me, but I want to know about what else can we do to protect ourselves when it comes to the hardware. I deal with the software mostly, so I can see all kinds of solutions, and you guys are working on some of those, which is great. But what do you think, for example, about the Intel management engine? Is that a backdoor? Does this mean that we all actually have a backdoor? So it doesn't matter how much we encrypt things, ultimately we're potentially exposed anyways.
I mean, do you mind if I simplify? Because earlier people talked about open source hardware. How do we actually do open source hardware in practice? Can I build my own hardware to be secure? I don't know who's best to answer that.
The Intel management engine is a very good example. I mean, it's like a computer, I mean, like a CPU in the CPU. And by full irony, I think it was discovered by Russian hackers, white hat hackers, how to disable it, and then Intel admitted, yes, okay, they added this switch for the NSA, such they can have CPUs without Intel ME. And by the way, Intel ME was also how we started a discussion with the Swiss government on e-voting. We asked them, like, rhetorically, is it really like with these computers that we want to count our votes, really? And they couldn't really provide an answer to that. And for the rest, I mean, we need like investments of billions to build our own hardware, which we have under control. But still, I mean, for e-voting now, for example, I don't see a solution really, because you can always exchange the hardware in the end. I mean, if you are a state-level attacker, that is like it was also done in Germany, you can just exchange the software physically and then it does something else. So there I don't really see a solution, but to increase privacy and security for everyone, it would be a good thing to have like the hardware under control somehow.
I think this still works, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's still on. Yep.
There's a new processor coming out, or there is an open instruction set for RISC-V, very interesting project, which is also a processor that is fully verifiable. That's probably one way out, and I think their first models are you can now buy them, but still, I mean, they're not as powerful as your Intel, so if you're still doing games or whatever on your PC, you're probably not going to be happy with that.
So do we need because we have two companies in the world that produce chipsets, right? Was Intel and AMD, and then there's some Qualcomm and others.
Well, ARM is a big player. Every mobile phone has at least one ARM processor in it.
I mean, would it help having more manufacturers, or would they all get compromised anyways? Would they all put in backdoors?
Well, if they have business in America, they're actually now they're actually forcible to put in backdoors.
They have no choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why some mail providers actually shut down, because they couldn't risk exposing their user base.
Yeah. Okay, that was an excellent question. Can we get another question like that? Yes, sir, at the back. But by the way, how are you holding up? Because I don't think you've slept in the last 5 days, organizing this. I'm surprised to see you, you're kind of wobbling.
What would you recommend for people which are now starting to concern about their privacy, and they had let's say, more how do I say? So they engage in social network, Facebook, Twitter, etc., Google, and now they are starting to get in touch with this topic and to care about their privacy, what's the least that you would recommend for a person which is not so technically advanced, but to take some measures and precautions to avoid any let's say interventions in his communications over the internet?
So a solution that anybody the layman can use without being too technically savvy. So no coding, just give me a button to click. Is there something like that? Give me a button and I click it in.
Because I think, sorry to interrupt, but because I think it's always the trade-off between convenience and privacy. The more private you will go, the more tech-savvy you have to be, and vice versa. If you don't care about privacy, everything is convenient, but your data is somewhere else, and someone will misuse it.
I think that educating yourself about and just learning about critical thinking in terms of your systems is a good first step. And there's also resources online that can tell you about the various products that are out there, including some of the stuff that was mentioned today. But off the top of my head, I know that there's something called Security in a Box, Tactical Tech Collective. They're also out of Berlin. They have a resource online. There's Me and My Shadow is another thing that they do. And there's a whole bunch of other organizations that work on digital security training things online. So you can find what software products are out there now. But I think just learning to think critically about your security. So think if something's free, you should be suspicious as to why it's free, including free software, I guess. That's kind of ironic to say, but if I should say that if there's a company behind it, be suspicious of that company. How are they making money if the product is free? Also think about what data you're sharing and is it necessary to share it?
And what is a good age to start educating people? I mean, give you an example. I was 30 years old before I found out about this thing called privacy, you know, because it's a concept that doesn't exist in many cultures. So trying to explain to a 10-year-old about privacy and protection, is that really the right approach? I mean, or do you do it in university, or how? Do you have any experience with this?
Every age. I mean, I have a 4-year-old, and I talk to her about privacy issues already, but you know, pretty basic stuff. But I mean, I think as soon as kids can start talking, you can start talking to them about issues. Just like you talk to them about other issues in the world, you should start talking to them about this. But every age, it's really important for us to be talking about these things.
Yeah, I would like to add something in terms of education. I think education is one thing. I mean, privacy is a human right, so we should educate our children what we have as human rights, even if it's sometimes hard that people rely to them or that societies meet them. If you mention Facebook and stuff, I would say apart from the getting informed about what technical means are out there, it's very important to raise the issue with your friends as well. Because part of the convenience of Facebook, or part of the inevitability of Facebook, is that all your friends are there. So how would you communicate with them if you cannot talk to them anymore? So it's important to raise the issue within your social family.
Well, first of all, there was the question, is there a button I have to press to get privacy? Yes, there is. It's usually called the off button. But of course, for most people, that's not an option. And I think that is the point. You always have to make a decision between what you consider your self-interest, it could be convenience, it could be something else. In the very moment you are participating on these platforms, and the long-term consequences you probably do not see. So you have to make this. You have to make this decision, and in the end, it is a decision. You cannot have privacy on Facebook or on Google. That's fucking impossible. So you have to accept that. So you have to make a decision to say, okay, I don't care. So I participate on these social platforms as I did before, or you try to find ways out of it. I think there is no third way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I
I might add something.
Go ahead.
I think most important thing is consciousness. I mean, you need to somehow internalize the fact, or the possibility at least, that everything you do online will be public or used somehow in the future. I mean, also people saying I have nothing to hide. I mean, China is a very good example now. Every little bit of how you move, how you talk will be used to score you. And that's not just China, also, I mean, in Great Britain there is also a program called the Karma Police, where they try to do the same, to rate people how dangerous they might become in the future, so based on your past actions. And so you need just this consciousness that everything might be used at some point. So that's the most important thing. And then, yeah, as already said, you can use tools, of course, to somehow increase privacy. But basically, you are just increasing costs. You are not really like, there's no 100% security. Your device can always be completely hacked. So probably you.
Nothing to add.
Yeah, Klaus has switched off the off button. So he's got it right. He's doing it right. Yeah. Can we have another question? I mean, this is fascinating. I mean, you know, to have these people come over from Switzerland and Germany and have them on stage, this is your chance. The gentleman with the red shirt, and then we have the gentleman there with the blue shirt. Can we get a mic over here? Thank you. Because they're going back to Switzerland, yeah? They're not coming back tomorrow. So this is your opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting presentations. The whole concept just sort of seems like it's me against the world. So I guess my question is, are there any applications or projects that actually focus on a tight group of people? Let's say I want to bring 15 other guys and I don't want to compromise in terms of security. So in that regard.
So a bit like we go off to Greenland and start a colony, and we don't communicate
not
with
in
the rest
that
of the world.
regard. It's not a utopia, but in a way, I mean, last year I was very fascinated by a book called Swarmwise. It's written by the leader of the Swedish Pirate Party, and in that book he actually talks organization-like structures, how you organize big structures, but you keep the smaller communities very tight. So you have this social interaction, and so if we are going to decentralize everything, we should also consider the people part of it and how you can engage people, even in politics. Okay, we're focusing on the voting part, but what does it matter how we vote if people are not politically active or they want to know what's going on in politics? So in a way, why aren't we thinking about organizational solutions where we can...
Can we form a free state or a free subgroup or a I mean, blockchain in a way is a sort of anarchist community, although it's globally distributed. What do the panelists think?
Thank you very much for this question, but I don't have I don't have an answer, but I can maybe just tell my thoughts. I think it is very, very true that the question of how to organize is very important, in the sense that all these bad influences or bad results that we heard about have to do with exploiting things, which is also aligned to exploitation of resources in general, which also is aligned to how we deal with our world and with which kind of costs we take into account for creating our societies. So I would say it's a question of where your interest goes. So if I understood you correctly, you're asking how to build projects that can change something. Is this no?
Particularly, but I'm sorry. Basically, we're all talking about how to protect your own data. So I guess my question is, what can everyone do to, or what can I do to protect the information that you're giving me? You know what I mean? Basically, how can we create an environment where people would be free of any actions or implication of their words? So, because we all communicate, but at the back of our minds is all the environment. What's going to happen if I say what I mean or what I want? So, are there any, is there any work done towards very simple applications where most of the encryption is done on the back end, so most people can use it, but in a situation where this can be used by people who have no idea about security, but they would be free to communicate without the fear that this information is going to be leaking to their bosses, to their, and so forth.
Yeah, so if you're asking for technical solutions for group situations, probably somebody of the others can say something. But I think apart, because there are open source solutions, but they don't have a large user bases, and they are very difficult to be communicated because nobody is really interested. So I think also in this sense, it's a twofold problem. On the one sense, it's important to create organizational structures in groups that you are free to talk and develop new ideas that are not aligned with the traditional way of how economic works and how our societies works. And then along with this goes the development of technical solutions that also work for groups. And if somebody wants to say something, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, works. Okay. So the EFF has a messenger rating site. Actually, we from the Digital Society of Switzerland published this as well. It's obviously in German. Okay, Hernani says it's a better one. We published a better one, have better arguments. Yeah, go there. But the problem is, if you don't want your boss to find out, you also have to choose the recipients of the messages, even if it's encrypted, even if the state can't get to it. If your coworker can make a screenshot of it, it's out there. So choose wisely with whom you communicate and also authenticate your contacts. Don't believe somebody writing you, hey, it's Hernani, I've got this great chat app, add me there. Very fine person. Make sure that in Freema or some other signal or so that you have a green light there, as in PEP.
I mean, for right approaches, there are like DHT-based peer-to-peer messengers like Riot or Tox, or I think Tox has some security issues, but let's say Riot. And there is also Briar working over Tor, or even if you shut down the internet, you can still communicate through wireless or Bluetooth and stuff like that. So there are solutions. What?
Secure Scuttlebutt too.
Secure?
Scuttlebutt?
Scuttlebutt, I don't know. You probably can add afterwards. Yeah, so there are solutions which sometimes are also reflected in their user base, also reflected in the social space. I mean, it's more like anarchist groups or hacker groups using such things, and that's also part of the problem because you cannot reach your mom in the end. So that's something we are trying to change with PEP, perhaps at some point, but at the moment it's not that far. So. Yeah, work is being done, more work is needed, and I think without political action we cannot really change the whole thing, because, I mean, even if you shut down thing, you will still be surveilled with cameras and stuff like that, or probably we will have microphones soon everywhere in form of IoT devices. So we are entering a really dangerous thing, I think, and this must be stopped politically.
So even if I put up my own satellite in space, it's still not safe?
It's not 100% safe, but it's probably more costly to do something against. No.
I think if you want to help other people, then start using tools, give feedback on, use privacy-enhancing tools and give feedback on how they can be better, more user-friendly, and then also to share that knowledge with your friends and your family. things like, by more people using privacy-enhancing tools, then the stronger everybody becomes with it. So Tor people always talk about how it's really important for many people to use Tor to make the network stronger. And the tool that I mentioned was just Secure Scuttlebutt. It's another one of those social networking platforms that helps you respect privacy choices.
Great. Can we get the microphone to the gentleman with, yes, the gentleman with the, yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure if, yeah, because my question is a bit more technical than most of the questions, but I just will ask it. Yeah, currently there is several privacy cryptography algorithms like zero-knowledge proof and ring transactions, and yeah, which solve most of the problem with validation and privacy, which sound like a solution for e-voting, as example. So this is one of the questions, what you think about these algorithms, if you're familiar with them, and the other is, yeah, the direct problem with the privacy is physical relation between our physical world and this virtual world. For example, IPs and yeah. Is there any solution about this privacy? Yeah, because when you send some data, you still have relation with mobile operators, with internet providers, with UIP, with that you have initiated some action. Do you see some solution also to this problem? Yeah, because for me, yeah, the electronic problem is more or less solved with these cryptographic algorithms. Yeah.
So zero-knowledge proofs, can anybody talk about zero-knowledge proofs or similar things? And then the second part of the question was, you know, the current version of the internet is inherently, has a lot of leakage, a lot of failure points. Is the next version, the decentralized internet, going to be better in that respect?
I can just say I'm excited about things like zero-knowledge proofs, and I think you mentioned Monero's approach too, but I think that they're experimental and there's trade-off decisions to be made in each of those, but I don't know, it's exciting to see us making progress.
Yeah, as with any algorithm, it all stands or falls with the key exchange and the authentication of your partner you're communicating with. If they're not who they are, your algorithm doesn't give you anything because the key's out there. And to the location-based profiling, I mean, there's no real other version than switch off your phone. I did that when I met with some guy who gave me some information. You turn off your phone, leave it at home, meet without your phone. First, you will have much more engaged conversations with that person, and second of all, because you don't look at your phone, and second of all, you're probably not being surveilled if you don't carry anything that transmits on you.
And that's an interesting point, because I've heard even when you switch off your phone, you think it's off, but it's actually not. So I mean, does each one of us need to build a Faraday cage at home to be safe? I mean, is that a solution? Or?
I mean, there's a baseband in there, which in most cases is completely unsecure. So you need to really, if you want to be sure that your phone is not being used as a microphone or something, you need to really put
it far away.
No, or just take out the battery or something like that, if that's even possible. For the e-voting thing, I mean, you can do every cryptography you want. In the end, you are counting secret votes. So the main problem here, I mean, despite that no one is understanding really what we are doing in the end, I mean, like regular people don't really get the process. I mean, like counting crosses on paper is like straightforward, every child can do that, so that provides confidence to the process, that's one thing. But the other thing is, if you are counting with universal verifiability, as it's being now tried to be done in Switzerland, if you are counting like secret votes of everyone, I mean, how do you know that there are not 10% of votes in there of people who never voted? I mean, in Switzerland, I think 40 to 60% of people, or sometimes even less, cast a vote. But there are lots of others which you could use to change a yes to a no in the global thing. So you need also to trust decentralized authorities in the end, and the administrators and everyone, that there are not votes in there which are not representing the will of the people. So you have lots of issues there, and also these codes which you can use to verify with the screen if the yes is a yes and stuff. I mean, if there is a copy of the codes, you can, in connection with the malware, you can of course just do whatever you want. In the end, you are trusting the screen. That's basically what you are doing there. And yeah, Android device security, for example, is catastrophic to say the least. I mean, we are not even able to deploy updates to cell phones, and we are trying to do e-voting and such things. I mean, that's really like hilarious.
I think it's important to remember that these problems we are discussing here, like privacy or freedom in the broadest sense, are actually not technical problems. And we as geeks or people in the computer or IT industry usually tend to solve every problem with technology. Sometimes problems do not have a technological solution. And I think a lot of these problems surrounding privacy and the future of our society have to be solved on a different level. We cannot fight basically the impacts, the consequences of these changes by pure technological solutions. Solutions can help, but they are not the panacea for everything in this context.
I would very much like to stress that when I was a child, I grew up at the countryside, everybody just left the doors open and nobody would ever try to steal something. And I think in the end it's about putting back trust into our relationships and into our societies, the trust of not being stolen, or of somebody not steals from you, and the trust into not being exploited. And if we don't solve that on this fundamental level, then it would actually mean that even if there were technical solutions, it would put us in some kind of cage, because we could only communicate within this complete surrounding of technological solutions that are then overcome by new solutions, and you always have to monitor them, and it's a state of continuous paranoia. Then you don't want to be in there.
So sounds like we need to make some civilizational choices and focus less on technical solutions. And I mean, that's a really tough one considering there's 7 billion of us on the planet. So perhaps we can later build a Faraday cage around the 7 of us and then we'll be okay. Do we have any other questions? So I'd like to, at this point, if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to thank our wonderful panel and go for a coffee break.